It's time to review Sonic 3D Blast Flickies Island for the SEGA Mega Drive. Alright, exactly how long has it been since I last reviewed a Mega Drive game? Oh, good lord. Well, it's about time we remedied that, methinks. Sonic 3D Blast was the final Sonic game to be released for the Mega Drive back in November of 1996, and would be the final Sonic platformer to be made until Sonic Adventure nearly 3 years later. Unlike every other Sonic game for the MD, 3D Blast was not developed by Sonic Team, the Sega Technical Institute, or some variation thereof, but instead the British developer Traveller's Tales, in the days before they started making Lego, and more Lego. When it came out, 3D Blast received the distinct overall opinion of meh, though the Sega Saturn port of the game was considerably more well liked, mostly due to its new soundtrack and special stages. However, how does the original Mega Drive port hold up? Well, let's jump in and find out. Remember the cute little birds that occasionally popped out of smashed robots in the old games? Turns out these birds, also known as Flickies, inhabit the titular island and have the uncanny ability to access an alternate dimension via giant rings. Spying on them, Dr. Robotnik comes to the conclusion that the Chaos Emeralds are hidden in this new dimension, merely because if they weren't, we wouldn't have a game now, would we? Using the powers of science, the egg-shaped scientist captures the Flickies and puts them into little robots with the intention of getting them to find the plot devices. Meanwhile, Sonic the Hedgehog is on his latest attempt to escape the pressures of social life while not looking like a hikikomori by traveling across the land and breadth of Mobius, and on his travels he comes across Flickies Island and finds out what Robotnik's up to. And so, it's up to our intrepid blue hero to save all the Flickies, collect the Chaos Emeralds, and kick the Doctor's fat, juicy arse. Sonic 3D Blast is an isometric platformer where the screen is presented from a sort of top-down angle to provide the illusion of playing in 3D, and the goal is to find and destroy 5 enemies in each area, collect the Flickies hidden within each enemy, and guide them back to the giant ring. When you've collected all of them, you'll be able to access the next area and repeat the formula once or twice until you complete the level. You move around Sonic by pressing the D-pad in whatever direction you want him to go, you jump with the A and C buttons, and with the B button you can spin dash and roll into enemies while running, or you can activate the super spin dash where you charge up and take off in a blisteringly fast ball of spikes by holding it and letting go while standing still. Throughout each level you can collect rings to add to your high score, as well as allow you to get hit by an enemy without dying, and there are also a number of bonus boxes that can give a number of power-ups. Firstly are ring boxes, which add about 10 rings to your total count, shields that protect you from one attack and can also have a special effect depending on what shield you have, speed shoes, which can make you much faster for a short time, and invincibility, making you immune to all hazards for a small period of time. Something that's very important to look out for are Tails and Knuckles, 2 characters that, when approached with 50 or more rings, will take you to the special stage, an obstacle course where you have to collect as many rings as possible in order to collect the Chaos Emeralds, all 7 of which have to be obtained in order to get the best possible ending. While certainly not as bad as people make it out to be, the Mega Drive version of 3D Blast does have its problems, a fair amount of which can be attributed to the isometric perspective of the camera, which makes depth perception really difficult to judge. I know it may not sound like much, but believe me, when you get to sections that require precision platforming, especially Panic Puppet Zone, it's one of the most annoying experiences in the world to try jump onto a moving platform, miss it, and then having to do the whole thing all over again. It also makes some of the later boss battles very damn difficult, since you need to be able to judge where you can jump onto certain areas without getting attacked by one of Robotnik's traps or an environmental hazard. Honestly, this was such a problem for me that I actually had to use save states so that I wouldn't be driven insane to the point of rage quitting. Another big problem is making sure you or the Flickies don't get hurt, because if you do, the Flickies split off from you and wander about on their own until you get them back, which can become really irritating in the more hazardous stages such as Diamond Dust and the incredibly cheap Volcanic Valley. While I'm at it, allow me to quickly vent about Volcanic Valley. Filled with tons of lava pits and hazards, combined with the perspective issues and losing your Flickies over and over again, Volcanic Valley is one of the worst stages in all the Sonic franchise, so be very, very careful when you get there. And it does have to be said, while not a bad thing in and of itself, Sonic 3D Blast isn't very much like a Sonic game. The balance between platforming and speed seen in most other games is almost completely absent, with the only speedy parts being either auto-controlled or when you get the speed shoes, and the platforming sections, as I've mentioned, are mostly annoying instead of satisfying. So if you're expecting something akin to the Mega Drive classics, you're going to be quite disappointed. Now, despite all this, I think that the Mega Drive version of 3D Blast is actually a lot better than people give it credit for. First of all, the graphics for their time are really good. The animations for every character are really smooth, the environments are very detailed and colourful, and there's even an FMV at the beginning of the game. For a console released in 1989, actually having an FMV is really damn cool, though it hasn't aged well in terms of its looks. The music, composed by longtime series composer Jun Sonoy in his early days, is pretty damn awesome with catchy melodies that suit the levels really well and are also very memorable and great in their own right, with some of the best tracks being both acts of Diamond Dust, the boss theme that plays in the later levels, and particularly both Rusty Ruin tracks, which I will claim to my grave as being better than the still admittedly awesome Saturn songs. And while I said earlier that the gameplay wasn't very Sonic-like, I also said that wasn't a bad thing in and of itself because I actually quite like the gameplay. I like the change of pace from the other Sonic games and being allowed to take my time instead of just speeding past everything, and trying to get the best high score by getting all of the flickies into the gyring at once is actually pretty compelling. As well as this, there's something that damn well needs to be said. As a spiritual successor to the 1984 arcade game Flicky, let me just come out and say it that Sonic 3D Blast is about 10 trillion times better than that waste of thought and effort. It's an odd aside, but given that 3D Blast is essentially a 3D sequel to that awful game, I had to bring it up, so if ever given the opportunity to play either Flicky or 3D Blast, just play this and don't even consider the other one for even a millisecond. Okay, now that I have that little rant out of the way, Sonic 3D Blast Flickies Island is a pretty good game with very good graphics, damn awesome music, fun, compelling gameplay with a nice change of pace, and being a massively improved sequel to that bloody Flicky game. However, the isometric perspective makes precision platforming sections and certain bosses really frustrating. Losing all your flickies and trying to retrieve them is a massive pain in the arse. It doesn't really feel like a Sonic game, and Volcanic Valley is one of the most irritating stages in the Sonic franchise, period. It's not the best game in the franchise, or even the best Mega Drive game, but if you're a fan of Sonic, isometric games, or both, I recommend you give Sonic 3D Blast a shot and determine for yourself as to whether or not it deserves its critical apathy. As for me, I'll give this game a rating of pretty good. Pretty much what it says in the tin. A good game, nothing more, nothing less. I'm Father Dugan 9000, and I hope you enjoyed watching this review. Until we meet again, have a great day, all!